ನನ್ನ ಮುದ್ದಿನ ಮಕ್ಕಳೇ ಹೆಂಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ? ಬಯಾಲಜಿ ಪೇಪರ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಬ್ಯೂಟಿಫುಲ್ ಇತ್ತು, ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ? I hope you must have attempted all the questions, and this time I should say the paper was comparatively easier compared to last year. And look at the paper pattern. Oh my god, it is really amazing. Don't you think so? There are many MCQs, around 15 to 20 one mark question. I must say this was one of the best papers I think so far I have seen. Okay, now just a glimpse in this session, what are we going to discuss? Yes, basically we are going to do the analysis of the overall biology paper, ಮತ್ತು solution also discuss ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. Okay, so here we go students. If you see, this time the paper pattern was actually slightly changed compared to the previous years, right? And that is a really best part for you, correct? Okay, easy to moderate paper, so you can grade somewhere it was like a easy more than easier. Yes, it was actually easy to moderate kind of paper, and amongst that 32 questions were actually easy overall, 13 were moderately difficult, and yes, look at the difficulty level, around 2 were actually considered to be difficult. So isn't it a really very beautiful paper? Yes. Okay, MCQs are also on the easier side, and yes, look at this. If you have attempted the questions very well, especially I mean to say the MCQs, then yes students, you can score 40 to 50 marks easily, right? None of the questions were actually out of the syllabus. If you have thoroughly prepared the NCERT textbook, then yes, you will be scoring the maximum marks, right? So students, let us now discuss our biology paper. Okay, and ನೀವು ನಮಗೆ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಹೇಳಬೇಕಾ, ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ? Okay, so the first question is, which among these one is not a post fertilization event? And the answer here is, yes, tell me, answer here would be what? Right, that is gametogenesis. Second question, the most resistant organic material present on the exine of the pollen grain, and the answer here is sporopollenin. Student, this is again a very important question with reference to the entrance point of view also, right? So remember sporopollenin concept very well. Okay, the first movement of the fetus are observed during which month of the pregnancy? That is the 5th month. Tassels in the corn cob represents the stigma and the style. So let us move on to the next question, and we go to the 5th question. Here it goes. So which of the following is sexually transmitted disease which is not completely curable? That is genital herpes. Next comes an example for non-medicated IUD is option B. Who noted that the behavior of chromosome was parallel to the behavior of the genes? That was Sutton and Boveri. Sutton and Boveri, again a very important MCQ. Okay, remember this concept of Sutton and Boveri, right? Let us move on to the next questions here now. Okay, where are we? Okay, we are to the 8th question. The first genetic material, yes, could be the RNA. Which of the following is used as an industrial pollution indicator? That is lichen, right? Again a very important aspect as far the entrance point of view is concerned. The disease chikungunya is transmitted by option B, Aedes mosquito. Sonalika and Kalyan Sona are the varieties of the wheat. Further we move on to our next question. Which one of the alcoholic drink is produced without distillation? And yes, the answer here is wine. Next question, plant cells are bombarded with high velocity microparticles of tungsten or gold coated with DNA. Okay, DNA, that is nothing but what? Biolistic method. Next question, 14th one, the commonly used vector for gene cloning, okay, that is cloning genes in animals, is the disarmed retrovirus. And next question, according to Allen's rule, the mammals from the colder climates have shorter ears and shorter limbs. So these were the 1 mark MCQ, students. I hope you must have attempted all the questions, yes, with the right answer. Okay, now we move on to the fill in the blanks, and that is what we are going to come here with. The 16th question. Point mutation arises due to the change in the single base pair of the DNA. What is it? Single base pair of the DNA, right? 17th one. Dash states that two closely related species competing for the same resources cannot coexist indefinitely and competitively. Inferior one will be eliminated. That is nothing but the Gauss competition, right? Next question. Amount of the nutrients such as carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus and calcium present in the soil at any given time is actually called as what? That is the standing state, right? Standing state. The reservoir of gaseous type of the nutrient cycle exists in the dash. Can you tell me which one is that? That is the atmosphere. Okay. And the last question, the natural interconnection of food chains is actually making up the food web. So I hope, students, these were actually the 1 mark simple set of questions, and I hope you have attempted them very clearly, properly. Hope to get all the marks, because that is what going to boost up your marks in the biology paper. Okay. So now after this, we will move on to the subjective type of the questions. Okay. So far we have discussed the 1 mark question, that was part A, and now we move on to the part B, that is subjective type of question. So this will, student, help you to analyze overall how you have written the paper, right? So we can understand the marking scheme here for each and every question, right? Okay, so we move on to the first question, that is answer any 5. That means one question will be carrying 2 marks, and yes, you are supposed to attempt any 5 of them, right? So the first question here is, what are hermaphrodites? Mention one example. If you see, this was a chapter which was actually talking about the first chapter, that is reproduction in organism. And yes, the question is split in 2 parts. So if you see the marking scheme, you are supposed to define and tell what is actually the hermaphrodite, right? So when you write the definition for hermaphrodite or explanation for the hermaphrodite, you are supposed to write the words given as per the NCERT texts. Okay, so that is how you are supposed to write any definition or any explanation part. So in this, 1 mark will be allotted for this, right? What is the definition? And this 1 mark for the example, right? Okay. Next is distinguish between menstrual cycle and estrous cycle. So again, this is one from the first chapter itself, and you are supposed to distinguish with explaining for 1 mark what is menstrual cycle, then what is estrous cycle, and along with the example. So your example also will be carrying marks, right? 1 mark for both the sides, half of mark each. Okay. Next question, mention the 4 symptoms of Down syndrome. Again, this was been asked from the chapter principles of inheritance, that is genetics, and here there are some symptoms been mentioned on the book with the diagram also in the labeling somewhere mentioned. So any of the symptoms from the diagram itself or from the text itself you can mention here, but see to it there should be 4 symptoms, and yes, each symptom will carry half mark. Write the genotype of the parents. So again, from the same chapter, genotype will fetch you for 1 parent 1 mark. So that is what for 2 parents will get 2 mark for these blood groups. Okay. What are the 2 basic amino acids? Again, this was been asked from the molecular basis of inheritance. 2 basic amino acids, that is 2 marks for 2 amino acids. Differentiate between geitonogamy and xenogamy. Again, differentiation, that is for 1 mark here, that is you are supposed to explain what is xenogamy and geitonogamy, and yes, with that you can explain about the adaptation also shown by them with the examples, right? Mention any 2 examples of evolution by anthropogenic action, and here 2 examples meaning you can give more than 2, but yes, each will carry 1 mark, so 1 mark each. Okay. So these were some of the set of questions from this part. Now that is 1 question left out in part B. the use of CNG is better than petrol or diesels? Again, 4 reasons. That means each reason you are supposed to get half mark. So since 4 reasons are there, yes, so they will be expecting 4 reasons for half mark each. So here we could finish, and you can see actually the marking scheme also properly being given. If you are very confined to whatever been asked, so definitely you can score well here in this part too. Right. Okay. Now if we move on to the next part, that is part C. Answer any 5 of the following questions in about 40 to 80 words each wherever applicable. So you are supposed to attempt any 5. So each question will carry 3 marks. Okay. What is, now look at the marking scheme. Again, I should say students, the way they have asked the question is really very beautiful, because look at the split up given here. As I said, if you have thoroughly prepared the NCERT word to word, line to line, definitely you can answer all of them. So look at the question first asked here. Why is oxytocin necessary for parturition? And yes, the reason will be giving you here 1 mark. That is a 1 mark question. Strictly been said here, 1 mark for that. Right. And now here if you see, list any 4 hormones secreted by the placenta. 4 hormones, that means again it's for 2 marks. So 4 hormones means half mark each for 1 hormone. Okay. What is infertility? Give reasons for infertility in humans. Again, that will be a 1 plus 2 mark question like this, right? So you are supposed to give the reasons for infertility. And yes, infertility definition or explanation will give you 1 mark, provided you adopt the words from the NCERT book only. Aamele nodi, the simple question again, mention any 3 applications of DNA fingerprinting. 3 applications, 3 marks. So 1 application for 1 mark, yes, and you are supposed to write how many applications here? 3 applications, so 1 mark each. 1 mark each. Okay, move on to the next question here. Again, draw a neat label diagram of the Miller's experiment. And here, the Miller's experiment actually has got 6 labels, right? So when we say 6 labels, that means 6 labels, half mark each will fetch you 3 marks. Okay, half mark each, that will fetch you 3 marks, 6 labels. Correct? Draw okay, sorry, that is the 33rd question. Write the infectious forms of Plasmodium, okay? Again, which enter human through mosquito bite. So that is again 1 word. Look at that, the way they have framed the question. Scoring is actually not so difficult. Look at that, 1 word will fetch you 1 mark. Draw neat label diagram, a structure of antibody molecule. Again, the labelings here, you will have to give 4 labels, right, which will fetch you half mark each label. What is poultry? Mention 2 different components, important components of poultry farm management. Again, split it into 1 and 2. So 2 important functions, 2 mark, that is 1 mark each, right? And here the explanation, what is poultry as per the NCERT words, that is what is poultry definition. Next, move on to the question that is, what is ecological succession? Distinguish between primary and secondary succession. Here if you see, it has been asked from biodiversity, and yes students, if you see in this question, the 1 mark will be yes for what is ecological succession here. So you need to explain what is ecological succession here. So that will be for 1 mark, right? So here you are going to get 1 mark if you explain what is ecological succession, followed by 2 mark for the distinguish. That means 1 mark for this primary succession, followed by 1 mark for the secondary succession. Mention any 4 evil corporate which causes depletion of biodiversity. Strictly telling 4, that means half mark each with 4 points. Okay, fine. Among vertebrates, which group has the highest number of global biodiversity? Which group? Again, 1 word, 1 mark, right? Okay, so we move on to the next one, that is part D, that is the last part, right? So here we go. Sorry, not the last, yeah, that's the last part. And here we go. Answer any 3 of the following questions in about 200 to 250 words each wherever applicable. So these are big length questions. 3 into 5, that is 3 mark, 3 questions supposed to be answered, 5 mark for each. Now students, when you are answering these 5 mark question, you need to, explain elaborately. Remember that, huh? You cannot put point to point wise here. Somewhere here and there, like, significance. Even if they are not asking, it's your prime duty to add significance there because it's a big question, right? So that you need not do for the 2 mark or 3 mark. But when we ask you a 5 mark question, we expect some, all the points to be elaborately, nicely explained because it's a big length question. Okay. So what's the first question here? What is double fertilization? Again, there are 2 questions, 3 parts been asked. Double fertilization explanation will fetch you again, fetch you 1 mark, right? So what is double fertilization? Will fetch you 1 mark. Correct explanation as per the NCERT text. Describe fertilized embryo sac. So again, description is there followed by the neat label diagram. That means there are 3 parts here in the question. And here, as I said, 1 mark goes for the explanation. Then you will have to draw a diagram that is for 2 mark, a well neat label diagram with all the labelings, right? And the description will give you 2 marks. As I said, you cannot do any conjuice here when you write for a 5 mark question. You actually completely elaborate ಮಾಡಬೇಕು because again I am telling it's a 5 mark question. Draw a neat label diagram of human sperm. Look at that. One diagram giving you 5 marks. Yes, students, there are actually 8 labelings given for them and you are supposed to write all the 8 labels. So 8 labels, that is half mark for each labeling, right? And then total you will get 4 marks there. And yes, labels, and then there is 1 mark for the diagram. Actually, the diagram is very simple. One of the easiest question I can say. Okay. So the 39th question, what is incomplete dominance? Explain it with a reference to flower color and snapdragon. Again, there are 3 parts here. If you see, 1 mark goes for this, right? So 1 mark will go for what is that explanation, right? So what is incomplete dominance? 1 mark, correct? Explain it with reference to flower color. So you are supposed to give the schematic presentation, right? Along with that, you are supposed to mention the ratio, which is very, very, very important. Though they have not mentioned, explain ratio and all, but as I said, it's your prime duty to put the ratios. And yes, when you write the schematic representation, you are supposed to explain that little bit in words too, because it's a 5 mark question. Correct? Okay. Explain 5 benefits of creating transgenic. Again, elaborate explanation, 5 points, 5 marks, right? Straightforward. Okay, now we move on to the next question, right? That is 41st question. Again, look at the significance, how they have asked, point to point. So if you know the answers, of course, you can get 5 on 5 here. Entamoeba histolytica, for everyone, each of them will actually be fetching you 1 mark. Again, okay. Name the technology that can successfully increase the herd size of cattle in a short time. Look at that. Now there are 2 parts here. From here, that's the first part here. It goes like this. So the first part here would be, where is it? Yeah, the name the technology. So this will fetch you 1 mark. Name the technology, right? Followed by, this is another question in the same question. Explain the steps involved. So explain the steps involved will be allotted 4 marks. Right, so here you need to properly explain all the 4 steps, right? So that is again a beautiful question wherein they are allotting 1 mark for definition followed by the steps 4 marks. Now again we come to the next part, that is answer any 2, okay, of the following and each wherever applicable. That means 2 question, 1 question again for 5 marks, right? Again, these are big length questions, so you should be very careful when you attempt such question. Explain the role of microbes in industrial products. Yeah, so when we ask about the question, explain the role, of course, you're supposed to give 5 microbes and 5 roles. So here, you need to be very precise when you answer because it's again strictly telling role of in microbes. So if it is for 5 marks, so 5 microbes, okay, will give you 2.5 marks. So that will be 2.5 marks for the 5 microbes, and the role, that means allotted here will be 2.5 marks for the role. That means role will be again giving you the 2.5. So total it becomes the 5. So total of the 5 microbes with their role will fetch you 5 marks. Next question, write any 4 tools. Again strictly 4 tools, half mark each. Mention any two methods of introduction of the alien DNA into the host cells. Again, two method, 2 marks. That is 1 mark each. 1 mark each. Name the stain used in gel electrophoresis. Again, just name that. Look at that, how beautifully they have asked. Anyone actually, as I said, can clearly get the marks here. 2, 2, 2, 1. Compared to the big 5-mark questions, such are really jumbo questions for you, because there is no way you can miss your marks if you know the concepts very well. Describe the Griffith's experiment to show transformation in bacteria. Yes, a lengthy question. You need to explain everything properly here, because as I said, this is again a 5 marks, so we expect all being elaborately explained. All the points here, elaborate explanation is expected here. Okay, because it's a 5-mark question. Okay, now look at the next question again. Mention any two mechanisms how body compensates low oxygen availability at high altitude. Two mechanisms, meaning that is again one for 1 mark, that is fetching you 2 marks here. So here 2 mechanisms, that is 1 mark each. Right? Mention right to suspended activities in animals against abiotic stresses with suitable example. Right to suspended, that means 1 mark each again with 2 examples, right? The Abington tortoise in Galapagos Islands become extinct after goats were introduced onto the island. Mention the type, just mention the type of the interaction, that is fetching you 1 mark. And the last question, write a brief account of electrostatic precipitator with a neat label diagram. So when we ask again, it's a 2 parts question here. So diagram will give you 2 marks, and yes, the explanation will fetch you here 3 marks. So that's of course a neat label diagram. So minimum of that 4 labels we expect here along with the explanation. So students, here I could see that actually the exam, it was really a very nice paper, and hope you must have done very well also, and all the best for your results. Thank you students.